Alright guys, welcome back to the channel for another update on the tropics. And today we're going to be looking at both Sally and Paulette because they're both are approaching land. Paulette approaching Bermuda and Sally quickly, or actually slowly approaching the Louisiana and Mississippi border there. So this is what we're going to be looking at. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Recently, the views on the channel have been dropping, and I'm not sure why, so comment down below suggestions of what you don't like anymore in my videos or suggestions to make my video improved and better. Alright, so let's get on with starting off by a look at the tropics. This is a wide look at the tropics here. And you can see a little bit of all we have going on, so let me just go over everything we have going on. First off, here is Hurricane Paulette, Cat 1 hurricane, 80 mile per hour is right there. Once again, approaching Bermuda. They're clearing out. This is Tropical Depression Renee right here. Having still some pretty strong convection, but, you know, it is having a fair amount of trouble. Here's this Tropical Storm Sally off the Florida coast, continuing to organize. And then we have Tropical Depression 20 right here, also continuing to organize, and Invest 97L right here, and then a tropical wave that's going to be coming out of the coast soon. So quite a lot of activity in the tropics. Oh, and also there is something around here that's moving down, and that's also a disturbance. So quite a lot of things. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have actually 4 tropical cyclones right now, believe it or not. Alright, so we're going to be getting started with Tropical Storm Sally. Winds of 60 miles per hour on the latest National Hurricane Center update. Now, in the latest frames, you can see that brand new blow-up of convection. And that is a new blow-up of convection around the center. It's been sheared for a while. If we looked earlier, we had, obviously, the center and then all the convection on the southern side. So now we're getting actually the center around right here, and then convection starting to wrap around that center. It has lost quite a bit of convection. You can see those cloud stops really slowly decreasing, but we still have some nice banding to the south here. Not a lot of banding happening to the north, but maybe some will occur. And then now we're seeing this brand new blow-up of convection over the center, which will help this probably continue to organize and strengthen as we get this wrapping around the center on both sides with that low-level center around here. So really an organizing system. Florida's still saying some impacts from this, but as it's been moving on all those axes, I'm going to be showing you guys where the center kind of moved. And as you can see here, it is continuing to move away from land, now being probably around here, and it will continue to do so, most likely kind of curving this way then, and then moving most likely like this in the next couple of days here. So this is really what we're going to be looking at. Of course, some big thunderstorm here blowing up over the northern coast of Florida. Alright, so here's the latest National Hurricane Center forecast. A couple of warnings in effect. Tropical storm watches here on the coast of the Florida Panhandle. Not too sure why they're there, because tropical storm force winds are not even going to be there. But anyways, tropical storm warnings also on that Florida coast, and then it is expected to make landfall as a 80 mile per hour hurricane, I believe, or 90 mile per hour hurricane, as it moves, probably making landfall here on the in Louisiana, according to this latest National Hurricane Center track. Hurricane warnings are in effect for most of the Louisiana and Mississippi coast. So also, and then we also have hurricane watches in effect for the Alabama coastline. Now this will continue to stay as a tropical storm, probably all the way to Mississippi, before weakening as a tropical depression, but will still most likely be a rainmaker. Now, as you can see here, the landfall point could go all the way from the Mississippi-Alabama border to all the way into mid-Louisiana. And so this could go like this, right? This could curve out like this, but it could also as well curve out all the way like this. So we have, especially once it moves inland, we have a pretty big cone on where it's actually going to move after that. But definitely going to be a rainmaker all the way potentially into the North and South Carolina area. All right, so now looking at intensity, guys. Now you may be like, well, lastly, as you can see here, almost none of them are a tropical storm anymore, or hurricane anymore. Now, the reason for that is that we haven't seen a lot of strengthening yesterday or today, which the models have backed off on. We were just seeing it stay at around 50 to 60 miles per hour. But now that it's organizing, National Hurricane Center still says it is likely to strengthen to a hurricane before making that landfall point. And I do agree. This is my forecast currently. I do think it will uh, be a hurricane before really weakening as it makes that landfall point. One model still show a Cat 2, 3 to 4 models showing a Category 1. So still a couple showing a Category 1, but most of them show a very weak 75 or a strong tropical storm, which is of course reasonable. It is currently at 60 mile per hour, so it'll probably strengthen a little bit more overnight and tomorrow. So 75 mile per hour is definitely, I think, still a reasonable landfall point. So here's that latest recon pass. Now it is a little bit misleading slightly, but you can see they did find a pressure of 1,000 millibars. National Hurricane Center actually said, well, nah, it actually has a pressure uh, of 996. So not too sure why that happened, but most likely they missed the center or something like that. But as you can see there, they found around 35 mile per hour in this entire area here. And then they found, oh, by the way, let me refresh it. We probably have some new recon data. No, we do not. Okay. And then they actually found, so 35 mile per hour. They found a couple 40 mile per hour there, and then that's pretty much it. All the rest is just 30s, just like 30s and 35 mile per hour. So you may be like, well, this is pretty weak. But, it really isn't. They haven't gone in this entire quadrant. Based on National Hurricane Center, this is where we have the most tropical storm force winds around here. Actually, National Hurricane Center mostly has it like this, a little bit bigger than that. But on one of the last recon planes, they actually found 60 mile per hour in this area. So we'll definitely see when it does have another center pass through here, maybe going like this and then going. So we'll definitely have more information when that happens. Alright, so quickly, let's have a look at the models for Tropical Storm Sally, and then we'll move on to Tropical Storm Paulette. So here is the GFS run on this, and it actually has a 980 landfall. So if we change this, change this to Eastern U.S., it does have a 979 landfall, believe it or not, 977. So that's a pretty strong system. And then we change this to the wind. We're looking at a fairly strong system. So definitely something to monitor, as it does have a potential 970 to 979 landfall, which would be potentially a category 2 hurricane at landfall, which of course is very possible, as it is likely to really strengthen right before that landfall point. So the GFS has a Cat 2, strong category 1, category 2 landfall. On the other hand, the European model has a much weaker storm, only a weak tropical storm landfall, so maybe a 50 mile per hour. So really a different story. The CMC a little bit more like, also the CMC is also much more like the current European model. Now, something to notice though, it does start the model off as 1,003 millibars, and it currently has 996 millibars. So it is a lot stronger than the model anticipated, but still. Overall, right now, it seems like most models show a weak cyclone. Now, this one is a very interesting take. The icon actually shows it really stalling. So it does initialize at that 1,000 millibars. Of course, it is currently at 996, so it already initializes it a little bit too low for what it already is. So already the national is too low. But if we look at that, it does still show strengthening and then kind of stalling here. And this one, it really blows up and actually, believe it or not, strengthens all the way to 961. And this is, again, a very interesting path, because this model actually brings it like this, right? And then it kind of stalls here and goes back like this, which is extremely interesting. And that will probably be one of the worst case scenarios if that was to happen. But it kind of stalls it here and it kind of curves back this way out, as this probably, we do have this high pressure here, which is going to start picking it up according to this model. But since it doesn't really have anything pulling it, it kind of stalls around here and then actually gets pulled out by this ridge up there. And this allows it to make, believe it or not, only a 970 landfall, but peak as a 961 landfall, which would most likely bring it potentially into the upper Cat 2, potentially into the Category 3s, which would really be, again, one of the worst case scenarios if this were to happen. You can see it there, kind of stalls there, and then kind of turns back toward the Florida Panhandle, which is really an interesting take. Again, the Navigen very 998 landfall, so most small do show weak landfall. All right, so now moving to tropical storm or Hurricane Paulette, a little bit of a stronger storm, believe it or not. Here, of course, it is a stronger storm. So here's what it currently looks like. Its eye is collapsing, which is rather interesting. But it did have a pretty big eye, and we're now seeing the collapse of the eye. So potentially it will reform its eye later on. But you can see there a very fairly organized system. We have some banding to the south here. Let's actually pause it on that last frame, shall we? So this is what it currently looks like with its eye collapsing. We do have pretty nice banding to the south and to the north of the system, like you will see with the hurricane. And then we do have this eye wall, but we actually, as you can see there, do have the eye collapsing, which is rather interesting. But with the size of it, I think it's going to collapse and reform a smaller eye, which is really going to be allowing this to intensify further. And as you can see on that track, the National Hurricane Center does expect this to potentially peak as a Category 3 hurricane. Now, they expect a Cat 2 landfall in Bermuda, and then to peak at a Category 3 hurricane and remain a tropical system all the way that far north into. That is pretty far north for a tropical system. That is as far north as Canada. Look at that. Tropical system at this far north is very unusual. Well, it is usual, but that is pretty far north, and it actually shows it remaining a hurricane till the Canada area, which is going to be bringing some very heavy surf to and rip currents to this entire coast here, most likely. So for surfers and things like that, that could be a little bit of an interesting one. But overall, also still possibly bringing some surf to Florida. It is going to take that curve and then move out to sea. So really the only effects we're going to be looking at Bermuda, which does have a hurricane warning in effect. All right, so here are the intensity guidance models. And right now, as you can see here, it is at 80 miles per hour. Most models show it, every single model actually, so they're becoming a Category 2 hurricane in the next 20 to 36 hours, and then peaking as a Cat 3 in the next 48 to 60 hours before gradually weakening all the way down to tropical status in 132 hours. So if we actually look back to this, they only show it weakening down to tropical depression status all the way over there. So very interesting to say the least. I definitely think it will peak at least as a strong Cat 2, not too sure about Category 3 yet. And we can, just with the way it's looking right now, and its eye collapsing, but I'll definitely see as tomorrow morning whether how strong that would potentially peak. Okay, so now very quickly looking at those models for potential guidance. We're not going to be taking too much time on this because we pretty much know, but the GFS makes a 965 landfall and then goes all the way down in the 959 at most, which obviously is a fairly strong system, but nothing too crazy. And it actually, believe it or not, does some interesting Fujiwara effect and actually goes back down because you can see there. You can see there potential tropical depression 20 actually kind of does something weird there. It actually goes this way here, and then that one kind of moves down. So potential Fujiwara effect with that one, which is very interesting. Okay, quickly looking at the European model here for some more guidance. It does show a very strong system, of course. Let's go back here to where it is. It does show a very strong system, of course, making potential landfall in the next around 24 hours. And as a 959, so a little bit of a stronger one than the GFS here. Alrighty, so now looking at that flooding potential, believe it or not, Sally could bring up to 20 inches, which is going to be life-threatening storm surge, and actually 7-11 feet of storm surge. So if you are living in those low-lying areas, evacuate. And actually, the Louisiana has put a mandatory evacuation for a couple of areas. Now, the storm is expected to make landfall right here. So the center, if you're in the center, of course, could be worse. But take this into account. Look where the storm is. It's expected to go like this and make landfall right here. But can you see that worst of the impacts will be on the east side? So don't only focus on the storm's center, but that rainfall up to 20 inches could be absolutely devastating. So definitely keep that in mind. We also have a very high chance of potential flash flooding. So really a lot of interesting. Alright, so in terms of the shear, as you may or may not know, it had been shear for a while, and now only is in 5 knots of shear as well as Paulette. Alrighty, so thank you for watching the video, everybody. I'll have more updates as we go on, and potential live stream tomorrow. Subscribe for more updates.